As you speak, you see, I'm just seeing a brazen Islamophobe. And people say that phrase doesn't exist. It doesn't. All I've heard from you is dumb bigotry. There's something wrong with you. You're not the American dream. You're the American nightmare.
Yes,
you would deport every Muslim from the US and the UK, would you?
Yes, I am the only one that has the guts to say it.
Oh, there's nothing courageous about being a bigot.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Did you know that teaching a new Muslim like me
the entire Salah for the next 50 years
just costs £10?
Imagine on the Day of Judgment.
You see hundreds of people whom you don't recognize
that have learnt Salah because of your Sadaqah Jariyah.
Every wudu, ruku and salah they perform
is on your scale.
You can sponsor Salah mats for just £100
and help 10 to 30 people to learn how to pray Salah. Click the button
or the link
and donate now.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to support the channel. Piers Morgan hosted desperate, try-hard Colombian pro-Israel Christian and anti-Muslim grifter Valentina Gomez. And with Piers being on a roll recently exposing Islamophobes for their petty lies, he did not disappoint this time around either and proceeded to humiliate Gomez for her disgusting hatred of Muslims. Let's watch the first clip.
Valentina Gomez, you were laughing as you were listening there. Many people have not been laughing at your video, particularly at phrases like "vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas." If you had a Muslim candidate in Texas saying "vote for me so we can kick every dirty Christian out of Texas," you would rightly, I imagine, be outraged at that. Why do you think it's acceptable to use a phrase like "so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas"?
Good morning, Piers. And since you didn't have the decency of introducing me correctly, I'll happily do it. Good morning to all of my beautiful people in England. Hello to all of my lads in the UK. Last time I was there, I had an amazing time. I'm Valentina Gomez. I will be the next congresswoman for the state of Texas, and I'm a warrior of the one true King Jesus Christ. And England and Piers, the United States and England was built by white Christian men that follow Jesus Christ, not by a bunch of Mohammed. So let's get that cleared out right away.
Right, you haven't answered my question. Why do you, if it was the other way around, you would be rightly outraged. Why do you think it's acceptable as somebody running for office in the United States to be so blatantly, why would you be so blatantly hateful towards one group of people?
You call it hateful and bigotry and racist and all of that garbage. I call it the truth. America is a Christian nation. These Muslims come to Christian nations, burn our churches, rape our women, shoot our American soldiers point blank, killing one of them in broad daylight, then chanting Allahu Akbar. Piers, my brother is a National Guardsman. He literally puts himself on the line for this nation. So yes, these dirty Muslims have no place in America and have no place in England.
But as you speak, you see, I'm just seeing a brazen Islamophobe. And people say that phrase doesn't exist. It doesn't. And I'm sure you find it funny, but I think you can make perfectly pertinent points about what's happened here without descending into such vile hatred towards an entire religion. And there are 5 million Muslims in the United States. Why would you want to categorize them in such a grotesque manner?
Oh, and those 5 million Muslims should definitely go back to their 56 Muslim nations. And let's get something very clear right now in your little show, Piers. I don't fear the groomers. I don't fear the pedophiles. I don't fear the corrupt politicians. And I definitely do not fear the dirty Muslims.
Let me bring in...
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
No.
I mean, we should be clear about the fact. I mean, sure, Valentina is just a bigot, plain and simple, engages in the worst kinds of bigotry imaginable. But it's worth noting that she's fundamentally un-American because the American Constitution says that you cannot discriminate against people based on religion. That is pretty clear. And so she's engaging in an anti-American campaign in the name of protecting America, which is just irony beyond imagination. So yes, she's a charlatan. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You can tell by looking at her that her IQ hovers around room temperature. To me, the real scandal is not engaging with her directly because she's beneath taking seriously, where you have just a complete hateful clown like this person representing that party without the party objecting to it.
Yeah, you know what?
Leading us towards a very, very dark place in this country.
I actually completely...
All right.
I completely agree with you. There are perfectly legitimate...
No, Piers. And
well, I actually do agree with you. I think your brazen bigotry is obvious.
Let's make something very clear, Piers. Yeah. I only discriminate against terrorists. These terrorists have no place in America. They have no place in the world. And the best type of terrorist is a dead terrorist. And let's look at your Quran. Your Quran 8:12 states to terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than the Quran. And that Afghani, that dirty Muslim that killed Sarah Beckstrom.
It doesn't actually say that, and this is the problem.
Valentina Gomez just comes across as someone who has a complete lack of social awareness. Aside from the fake laugh to mask her anxiety whilst being humiliated, she's completely oblivious of how weird and cringeworthy her conduct is, which was evident from how the whole panel was looking at her as if she was a circus act. And on top of her socially awkward demeanour, she genuinely seems like she has mental health issues, not to mention her glaringly obvious wannabe white imposter syndrome. As Piers said, if anyone used the same language to describe Christians as Valentina uses to describe Muslims, there would be an absolute uproar, and rightly so. For her to label the global Muslim community as dirty is rich, especially since Muslims are required to wash themselves 5 times per day before every daily prayer, in contrast to Valentina, who most likely doesn't clean her backside properly with water after she defecates. Valentina claimed that the US and England were built solely by white men that followed Jesus Christ. The irony is not lost on me that Valentina is saying this as a brown woman, and also because Jesus, peace be upon him, was a brown Middle Eastern man. Additionally, America and Britain were also built on the backs of foreigners alongside white people, who arrived by choice and by force, which includes millions of Muslims. So she's talking absolute divisive nonsense as usual. Piers was 100% correct to call her out for being a blatantly hateful, bigoted Islamophobe. And as far as her false claim that Muslims burn churches in the US and UK, this is an outright lie, as there are essentially no documented, verified cases in Britain, America, or any Christian majority European country where a church was burned and the perpetrators were confirmed to be Muslim. Her reference to crimes carried out by a minority of people from Muslim backgrounds in so-called Christian countries are condemned by the Islamic community and seen by us as not representing the practices of our faith at all. The facts are that there are many more non-Muslim people who commit crimes in the West. The only reason Valentina concentrates on people from Muslim backgrounds and doesn't condemn everyone across the board is because she's employed by Israel to spread Islamophobic propaganda. Valentina even called for 5 million American Muslims to leave the US and to go live in a Muslim country. Unlike Valentina, a third of those 5 million Muslims were born in the US, so if they have to leave, so should Valentina, since she was born in Colombia. I found it very ironic that she would mention corrupt politicians, when that is the exact definition of what she herself is, especially when we consider that she's on the take from Israeli lobbies who fund her failed political career. Piers's guest Omar was correct to label her un-American due to her prejudicial views contradicting the Constitution, and as being an all-round low IQ charlatan and a hateful clown that cannot be taken seriously for the way she conducts herself, which Piers completely agreed with, as do the majority of people with any sense. Valentina also outright lied when she said the Quran instructs Muslims to behead people of other religions. The reality is that any reference to any violence in the Quran is only made in self-defense during an act of war. Let's watch the next clip.
In the UK, we have as many Muslims, if not more now, than in the whole of the United States. So pretty disproportionate. I mean, by comparison, for example, in the United States, there are 4 to 5 million Muslims and 4 to 5 million Jews. In the UK, there are about 5 million Muslims and 250,000 Jews. So it's a different dynamic to what is going on in the country. And the concern in my country, which has always been very tolerant, I think very multicultural, very well assimilated in the main, the concern comes from people who look at reports, verified reports, that there are now nearly 100 unofficial Sharia law courts, for example, operating in the UK. In other words, there are a group of people, in this case, a Muslim community, operating their own law within our framework of our laws. Is that something that should be tolerated? I mean, should countries like the United States and the UK tolerate the existence of rival courts, rival law within their own border?
Now, on the question of Sharia courts, certainly they should not supersede the actual laws of the country. If a Muslim community wants to settle its own disputes using religious law consensually, they should be allowed to do that if they want to. There are certain things with Jewish law as well and many others. It's a matter of what the jurisdiction is of these courts. They should never supersede existing law, and I don't think that they do. I think these are completely consensual courts that people enter to resolve their religious disputes if they all parties agree that this is how they want to resolve their issues.
Valentina Gomez.
Sharia courts have no place in England. Sharia courts have no place in Christian nations. That's why you guys have 56 Muslim nations. We need to bomb more narco-terrorism to oblivion. That's the reality. You defend terrorists because you're probably a little terrorist yourself as well. That's the reality.
Why would you say that?
Why would I say what?
Why do you use language like that? Why do you brand a fellow panelist who's actually a respected journalist a terrorist?
Someone who is defending terrorists? Someone who is defending terrorism?
He hasn't defended terrorism. Only one, just to be clear, Valentina Gomez, I've had 3 reasonable members of this panel offering reasonable arguments.
But
all
I'm
I've
not
heard
reasonable
from you
towards
so
terrorists
far
and towards
is
those that defend
all I've
terrorists.
heard from you is dumb bigotry, accusations of terrorism against people who are just perfectly ordinary journalists. There's something wrong with you. Why do you do this?
Sounds like you during COVID, Piers. You were vilifying, shaming, and trying to destroy people for not wanting to take the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
You tried to destroy.
And you know what?
Djokovic.
I was wrong.
And
I was wrong.
exactly, you're wrong, and you still are wrong today.
Well,
Piers,
you don't become less wrong. I've admitted I was wrong. I've apologized. What I've not seen from you, is any admission of being wrong or an apology for the disgusting way you talk about people. Why do you do it?
I apologize for nothing. My statements and my actions have endured the test of time. And Piers, since you cut me off, let me finish. You've been on national television for 20 years, and during that entire time, England has only gotten more Muslim. For 20
when
years,
were you last in England?
Or to even call out the Muslims. Piers, you're not uncensored. The truth is, you have been complicit with the rape of England into its submission. It's not only on Keir Starmer, it's also on you, on the police and the courts that have covered up for their crimes. Absolutely. And I'll say what everybody else is thinking. England is better off without all the Muslims. And that goes the same way to the United States. We can solve all of our problems if these Muslims are sent back to their Sharia nations, because they're not here to assimilate.
You think there would be no problems? You think you'd have no, just to be clear, I'll tell you what, you finish. You finish. You said what you want to say. You said what you want to say. Yeah, you see, this has been my suspicion. Because the last time you were here, you were at a Tommy Robinson march. And this has been my problem with Tommy Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
That he and many of his followers, like you, actually hate Muslims. You're actual genuine Islamophobes. You would like them all removed from the
they belong in
country.
their Muslim nations. That's the thing. They're just obsessed with coming to Christian nations, burning our flag, chanting death to America, killing our American soldiers. So yes, they belong in their Muslim nations.
Piers Morgan mentioned Sharia courts in the UK as being of concern to him. Firstly, the Sharia bodies in the UK are officially known as councils, not courts, and have no official legal authority and operate on a voluntary basis for those who choose to use them, as Omar said. So Piers Morgan definitely needs to do more research on this, as he's made this false claim of an adjacent Muslim legal system in the UK quite a few times now. In fact, according to classical Islamic jurisprudence, Muslims are supposed to comply with the law of the countries we reside in, as long as it does not contradict the practice of our religion, and this exception never allows for crimes or legal violations. And as Omar said, in both the UK and the US, there are Christian and Jewish equivalents of Sharia bodies also. The fact is that Muslims practice Sharia in our everyday lives, as per the rules of Islam. So where there are Muslims, by default there will be Sharia. However, this does not interfere with the lives of non-Muslims, as it is not part of any official legal system, as I previously made clear. Valentina then went on to call for innocent civilians in Muslim countries to be bombed, and also had the audacity to label Piers' Muslim guest a terrorist due to his racial and religious background. I would say the person calling for innocent people, including kids, to be bombed sounds more like the terrorist Valentina. And well done, Piers, for once again calling out Valentina's bigotry and profiling a respected journalist like Omar on the basis of his heritage. That's like someone stereotyping her as being a gang member working for a Colombian drug cartel. Her lack of self-awareness is truly astounding. Like Piers said, Valentina's dumb bigotry makes it seem like there is something actually mentally not right with her. And when he questioned her on why she's like this, all she could do was bring up Piers' past mistakes rather than answer the question. The obvious answer is that Valentina is an Israeli shell that is paid to spread hatred against Muslims. But that analysis does not include the fact that she definitely does have some screws loose, and she is not subtle or believable whatsoever, and instead just comes off as a nasty piece of work. The difference between her and Piers is, at the very least, he owns his mistakes and apologises for them like he said, unlike her, who just triples down on her madness despite it being apparent to the world that she's a complete fraud. This clown even labelled all Muslims as rapists and absurdly blamed Piers Morgan for the growing Muslim population in the UK. By Valentina's standard, that's like someone stereotyping all Christians or even all Latinos as such, using the same minority rapists amongst them, which would be completely unfair. So her resorting to such cheap tactics just exposes her as a total scammer and an Islamophobe that hates Muslims, as Piers said. Let's watch the last clip.
These Muslims are not here to assimilate to the American or the British way of life.
Actually, many Muslims assimilate perfectly well.
They only contribute to rape statistics and terrorist attacks.
Really? And you don't think any white Christians commit any crime in the UK or US?
They do, and we deal with them.
Well, we do the same with Muslims who commit crimes.
No, you don't. No, you don't, Piers. That's why you have a huge Pakistani, a Muslim, a
that
dirty
was a
Muslim
disgusting scam. Yeah, you know what? On that point, you're absolutely right. the British Pakistani grooming scandal,
They're not British.
abuse scandal.
They're not British.
Well, you can use any terminology you like. I will use mine, which is the correct terminology. That scandal was disgusting, but it doesn't mean that every Muslim of the 5 million Muslims in my country are somehow complicit with those disgusting monsters. In the same way that when a white Christian commits a heinous crime, I don't assume that every white Christian is the same. Why would you?
Piers, you can take the Muslim out of a terrorist nation, but you cannot take the terrorism out of a Muslim. And give me one example of a Christian committing a terrorist attack right now against Muslims.
Let me ask you then: when the UK and the United States illegally invaded Iraq in 2003, I waged a campaign against that. So, what would you say about that illegal invasion of a Muslim country?
Muslims are killing Christians in Nigeria, Piers.
Right. So I didn't ask you about Nigeria. I asked you about Iraq.
Iraq? Well, repeat your question again, please.
Do you agree that we illegally invaded Iraq in 2003? I don't think she's
right enough to understand your question, Piers.
I don't think she does. I don't think she wants to understand it. But in 2003, we, in my opinion, illegally invaded Iraq, a sovereign country. 1 million people died and was a stain on my country and on the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who I think should have been held up in a court of law over what happened under my name and the name of the British people. But do you care about that? Do you care that 1 million people, including hundreds of thousands of Muslims, were killed in a war in Iraq, which in my opinion was fought on an illegal, false pretext that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, which he didn't, it turned out?
Piers, in 2003, I was 4 years old, and I cannot change what happened back then.
No, I asked you for your opinion. I asked you for your opinion.
Every terrorist country they want. That's the reality.
Your intellect has not grown a year since then.
The Taliban, ISIS,
you still think
they
like
all
a
come from the
4-year-old.
Middle East. But then they're obsessed. Yes, I'm honest. And I am the American dream on steroids. I have worked my way to the top.
You're not the American dream, Valentina. You're not the American dream. You're the American nightmare. You're somebody fomenting hatred towards an entire community in your country. And I don't understand why you need to do that.
They belong in their Muslim nations, Piers. That's the reality.
What's that?
They belong in their Muslim nations, Piers. That's the reality.
So would you deport every single? Okay.
For the UK,
so just to be clear, then you would deport. Just to be clear, you would deport every Muslim from the US and the UK, would you?
Yes.
You're just a bigot.
This is the kind of genocidal rhetoric.
They belong in their Muslim nations.
You know,
as
we have
any person in the United States, I am the only one that has the guts to say it.
Oh, there's nothing courageous about being a bigot.
There's nothing courageous about being a bigot.
I'll be very clear. The United Kingdom needs to grow a pair of balls and have some guns.
Actually, I'm very glad the United Kingdom doesn't have anybody like you. Here's my pledge to you. If it turns out the people of Texas, a state that I love, they're all as big as you are, then you'll win. And if you win, I'll get you back on Uncensored. But here's the deal. If you lose, you're never coming back. Fair deal?
Yes, let's make one thing very clear. Your team are the ones that begged me to be on the show, not the other way around. I have hundreds of millions of views. I am actually the only.
We literally sent you one email and you said yes. We sent you. Just to be clear. I don't know what. Just to be clear. Stop talking. Just to be clear, we sent you one email and you immediately said yes. That's not a beg. That's not a beg. That's a request for you to come on this program because I couldn't believe that you were going to be. I could not, honestly,
I wanted to come speak.
I couldn't believe.
I wanted to hear the British accent.
Let me speak. I couldn't believe that you were as vile and bigoted as it seemed. But it turns out you were. Trust me when I say this, the people in the 31st district of Texas are not going to vote for you because you're a vile bigot. And that is a fact. And you want to look at yourself and think about the way you talk about people.
Firstly, Valentina, a Colombian immigrant, calling for Muslims that are born in the West to assimilate is just ridiculously ironic. As Piers stated, the majority of Muslims in the West have integrated just fine. However, asking people to assimilate to the point they lose their religious or racial identity is just not going to happen. That's like someone telling Valentina she can no longer speak Spanish, eat Latin food, or celebrate her own Hispanic culture. This idiot even said Muslims only contribute to rape and terrorism stats. Well, let's talk about stats since Valentina mentioned it. The stats actually show sexual violence and violence in general in Colombia is alarmingly widespread and is much higher when compared to the average Muslim country. Additionally, research suggests that countries with the highest reported sexual violence per capita were predominantly Christian majority, with many countries with substantial Muslim populations being ranked among those with lower per capita sexual violence rates. The stats also show that Christian countries have historically been more violent than Muslim nations, which applies up until the present day. As Piers said, white Christians also commit crimes in the US. In fact, they commit the most crimes in America due to being the largest population group. And like he said, in the UK, all demographics of people are prosecuted by the law equally. Valentina, in response, denied this and typically brought up the historic UK grooming scandal that Israeli propagandists like her dug up over the past couple of years to distract people away from the Gaza genocide, even accusing Piers Morgan as being complicit in covering it up, which is simply not true. Similar to Piers, the entire Muslim community has condemned the UK grooming scandal 1,000,000 times over, with a prominent Muslim prosecutor even being involved in securing convictions for many of the perpetrators. And as far as Valentina's claim that Pakistanis born in the UK are not British, then by her metrics she's not American. All of her trash arguments are just self-defeating antidotes that can be used against her in the same way. Piers was spot on when he said 5 million Muslims in the UK are not complicit in the actions of a tiny minority. Valentina's awful attempt at a gotcha moment against Piers Morgan when she asked him to name one Christian terrorist attack against Muslims failed miserably, which was met by Piers naming the illegal Iraq invasion carried out by Britain and America that resulted in the deaths of 1 million Muslims. And all Valentina could respond with was that she couldn't remember due to her age, and a fake genocide in Nigeria. I've made previous videos about the Nigeria situation, where more Muslims are being killed than Christians by the same extremist groups. Go check them out. Isn't it once again ironic that Valentina Gomez all of a sudden pretends to care about black people now that she's running for office in Texas, when during her previous failed campaign in Missouri, her whole shtick was to demonize African Americans? As Piers stated, Valentina is a moron, pandering to bigots through peddling hatred in the desperate hope that she gets elected. By the way, Valentina wants to deport every Muslim from the UK and the US, including the sellout Muslims that also peddle far-right crap just like her, and who most likely support her, which is pretty hilarious. And speaking of hilarious, Piers Morgan giving chronic loser Valentina Gomez the ultimatum of never showing her face on his show again if she doesn't get elected was also pretty funny. Piers racked up another W for humiliating this dim-witted lunatic for being the complete con artist that she is. Thank you for watching. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.